Okay, so for today, we will look into the main issues in public sector, the strategic change, okay, where we have about these four subtopics that we will discuss, okay, which is the stimuli for the new agenda, 3 E's, and then 3 E's in public sector, and we will look into the Pettigrew model, okay. So when we discuss about the stimuli for new agenda, the new agenda basically is about the NPM, a new public management. Okay, so across all of these lectures, from the first chapter, we discuss on the ideas of the how the public sector being perceived and so on. And then chapter 5, we look on the NPM until chapter 14 is all about the NPM. Okay, all right. So organizations, okay, especially for those public organizations, they do exist in the changing environment where they are in economic, political, social, and legal aspects. So we didn't mean to say there are four aspects of environment that we will look into. Okay, so basically when we talk about the economy, we look into the economy fluctuates. Okay, the good time of the economies and also the bad time of the economics. Okay, where the generations of changing will demand for the different goods and services. So meaning to say, whatever public sector offered 50 years ago will not be the same as what we have now. And it is must be changed over the time, over the time, over the different types of the economics and so on, economic phase and so on. Okay, so that's why it must there must be a changes. Okay, there must be changes in the public sector. And then on the second aspects of environment, there will be the political environment changes. Okay, where we also look in 2018 when the new parties come into the power, they're bringing new ideas. So there are also changes of the um, the structures of the public sectors and so on. So change the changes of regime will also lead changes of the policies and so on, especially in the public sector. Okay. And then we also look into the legal context of changes. Okay. Example will be when those European country they're joining this European Union, how the legal trying how their constitutions has been changed to accommodate with the EU requirement. And in Malaysia as well, we look into the moment we join ASEAN, huh? The moment we join ASEAN, ASEAN, ASEAN. So the constitutions also need to be amended, and how the public sectors being run also has to be changed as well, to comply with the Asian punya rules, requirement, and so on. And of course, the demographic changes, okay, which is the social, okay, changes in birth rates, death rates, labor mobility will require the changes of the public sector approach. So all of these four aspects basically will affect how the government provide the services. So meaning to say, in this year 2020 and maybe another 20 years, yeah, the way that we look or the way that how public sector operates will be different. Okay, will be different. Okay, taking to example, okay, selalu yang saya cakap lah, okay, when we look into the services, the government services before, okay, basically in 1990s, for those who already grow up in 1990s, and now currently in year 2020, e-government is something never heard of. Tak pernah kami dengar pasal e-government. So meaning to say, all of the government transactions of what we do, whatever services that we want to have to get from the government, from the private sector, such as renewing the license and so on, you must go to the counter. Meaning to say, to that particular department, you go to the counter and you deal with it. Okay, but when we know that there's a IR 4.0 coming, okay, especially the starting of this MSC, e-government and those things. So the government services has been digitalized. And now, when we talk about the service, okay, you can go to, even you can just renew your Rotex through online. So there are some web portals that provide you with the services where you can renew your Rotex, car Rotex online, where you can apply for those assistance like bantuan macam bantuan ICNA and so on through online. You are no longer needed to go to the counter, okay, to apply for it. So this is where we look into how the government service has been changed for over the years. In within these 20 years, the changes is a lot. So when we talk about another next 20 years, okay, so we can foresee that the counter will not be the significance of having a counter will be not much. Macam sekarang counter servis di pejabat kerajaan masih wujud, tetapi next 20 years it is seen that counter ni takkan wujud lagi. Counter di depan untuk your deal takkan wujud lagi. Semuanya menggunakan online. Macam tu. Okay. So this is the change agent actually. How to change. Okay. How we change our services. How before this it is more into the policy implementation oriented. Now it's become more to people oriented. The services that government provide also become more people oriented as opposed to 30 to 40 years back. Macam itulah sebenarnya. Okay. So Johnson and Scholes identify 4 aspects of environment that influence the organizations, where, as I said in the earlier slideshows, politicals and legal, where those are factors that give rise to conflicts between people or groups of people. Okay. So political especially, okay, this will be, of course, we don't want to have this kind of conflicts between those group parties and so on. But actually, it is manifest in the party politics and it products such as in legislation. Okay, so meaning to say every political party, they have their own what we call as a manifesto or some ideas that they're fighting for. So meaning to say, when those particular political parties in power, so the manifesto, also the ideas that they're fighting for, they will translate it into the changes of the legislation, amendment of the law, and so on. Okay, and this also will affect how basically the public sector will be operated as well. Okay, so what happened will be, okay, if the competition or the power struggle is so competitive, the problem will be the public sector itself has to be changed for every time the different political power in charge. So maksudnya di sini, okay, all over the years, in Malaysia especially, we do have a quite stable public sector, meaning to say, okay, public sector kita, perkembangan mereka adalah agak perlahan. Okay, it's quite slow as compared to other countries. So why does it happen? It's basically because we have certain parties, they are ruling for over the years, okay, and a lot of things in public sectors have a very minimum changes. Jadi perubahan akibat daripada kestabilan kuasa tadi sangat perlahan. Okay, sangat perlahan. But the moment the change of regime in 2018, okay, melihat pelbagai kementerian tadi telah dirombak kembali. Melihat banyak jabatan-jabatan telah disusun semula dan sebagainya. Restructuring and so on. And those also will affect how the services of those public sectors. Okay. So there are certain departments has been consolidated, has been apa kita kata telah ditamatkan dan sebagainya. And then in year 2020, early of the year, kita lihat bahawa terdapat perubahan rejim kerajaan lagi sekali. So apa yang berlaku? It changed again. So the ministers change, the policy change, okay, the idea also of the public sector, the way that the focus, the objective also has been changed. Wujud balik kembali beberapa jabatan yang telah dibubarkan sebelum ini dan sebagainya. Okay, kementerian bertukar, dissolve of the certain kementerian consolidations, pecah balik dan sebagainya. Jadi ini turut menyumbang ataupun mempengaruhi how the public sector's deliverance on the people. So perkara bagi political and legal, this one is very it will very we call the impact towards the public sectors is very big. And then the second aspects will be the social cultural, where this includes the factors of the changes in the population pattern, such as increase in the number of elderly people. Okay, apabila sebuah negara tersebut menuju ke arah negara yang lebih ramai rakyatnya berusia golongan emas dan sebagainya. So how government will deliver the services also will change, where they're trying to accommodate those group of people, where this group of people become larger and larger. So they also need to cater for this group of people. Jadi macam mana cara kerajaan pun akan berubah juga. Polisi pun akan berubah juga dan sebagainya. Okay. And of course, the expectation of the people, okay, over the years, okay, when the people embraces those modernity, okay, people become more modern, more sophisticated and so on, the expectation of the government services will be higher. Okay, so they demand efficiency, effectiveness. They demand time must be, the services can be delivered within short time. They also demand the services must be good and so on. So this kind of expectation basically is somehow where the public sector, with the conservative way of the implementations, cannot accommodate those expectations. So with the changes of the public sector administrations, by embracing those new corporate management style, okay, so it can improve the quality of services, time delivery and so on. So yeah, we can fulfill those the expectation of the people. Okay, and of course there are attitude as well. Attitude in terms of the people and also the public sector itself. Okay, so attitude might be different from time to time, generations to generations. So public sector need to trying to accommodate those changes as well. And also there are cultural values, cultural expectation as well. Okay, different people with different cultural, different ethnicity percentage and so on will have different expectations. So they are need to consider those cultural expectations, and of course the value of the people itself, the value of the human, okay, within specific areas, specific countries, states, and so on. So the public sector need to improve to show that the services are according to the value of the people, how people look into how people determine the value, nilai-nilai yang baik lah kita kata. Yang mana public sector tadi perlu in line with those values. So when we talk about the changes in population, will leads to the changes in demand. Okay, so example, increasing number of elderly leads to increase of the certain types of health and social care. So the contoh kita kata, contoh macam Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat. Okay. Sebelum ini Malaysia we have quite high birth rate. Maksudnya budak kanak-kanak yang lahir yang muda tinggi berbanding orang tua. But due to the advancement of the medical healthcare services that we have, so the expectancy life of the people is increasing. Jadi in year 2050 kita ramai lagi orang tua. Macam saya lah, nanti tahun 2060 saya jadi tua. Pada masa tu, okay, the government will think about how to cater those elderly people. Okay. Jadi sebelum ni JKM, Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat, yang banyak fokus dia kepada yang untuk budak-budak, anak yatim, dan sebagainya kan. Fokus kepada kanak-kanak. Mereka terpaksa ubah mereka punya fokus kepada menjaga orang tua dan sebagainya. So this is the changes of the focus. Even though the same department, but the focus will be put more on keeping the elderly people, as opposed to previously they look into those babies, kids and so on. Itu beza dia. Okay. Walaupun department yang sama, tapi fokus dia telah berubah. Jadi bila fokus berubah, you need to change your objective, vision, mission. You need to realign your strategic planning with your focus and so on. Kita belajar dalam chapter 8, we talk about the strategic planning. So within 5 years, the moment we know that, okay, the numbers, the increment of the elderly punya group become higher and higher, makin banyak, makin besar. So how strategic plan of the JKM, let's say, have to need to cater those groups. Macam tu. And then knowledge about birth rate also helps the policymakers to make projections about the future demand for schools. Sekarang ni birth rate kita semakin kurang. Okay. Surprisingly, banyak sekolah ditutup. Sekolah-sekolah ditutup. And then, especially in the rural areas and so on, where the numbers of the student is decreasing over the years. So, the government also need to think about how to cater this kind of problems. Bagaimana? Within 20 years, 40 years, do we really need those number of schools? Do we need to restructure, realign, consolidating the schools into another school and so on, blah, blah, blah. So those are the things that need to be looked into. And apabila semakin rendah, semakin sedikit kanak-kanak lahir, okay, semakin banyak orang-orang yang tua dan sebagainya, maka Kementerian Pendidikan tadi might change their vision, their objective and so on. Okay. So increasing expectation means people want better service. Okay. So over the years, when we look into how basically the trend, okay, and also how those the parents has been exposed to the new ideas of education and so on, and then more and more parents become educated, those people yang degree level and above, ada keluarga, ada anak dan sebagainya. So the expectation also of these parents become higher. Jadi sebagai contoh, sebagai saya cerita tadi, Kementerian Pendidikan, so those parents, they demand better services, better quality of education to the kids. So what the ministry will do, they have to trying to accommodate, trying to look into their policies, their education philosophy and so on, in order to give a better service. Sebab tu, bila lihat sekarang ini, the idea of the difference of the schooling, daripada zaman kami dulu bersekolah, pada zaman anda dan juga adik-adik anda dan budak-budak yang sekolah rendah sekarang, in terms of technology, in terms of dia punya syllabus, in terms of their appearance, school teachers, the quality of the school teachers and so on, semuanya berbeza, sangat berbeza. So it means that people increasing expectations means people want better services. And then the third aspect they want to look is the economic aspect. So a lot of issues in terms of economic can affect or can influence the public sector policies and so on. So example here, availability and distribution of the resources, could be land, it could be labor, capital, money, and so on. Prices of resources and the quality of resources. So all of this will eventually impact on how the policies being changes, and also how basically the public sector services can be rendered. Biasa kita dengar apabila negeri-negeri yang there are a lot of resources, they have a prosper economy in terms of economics, they have a lot of money through their GDP and so on. Can see that how the public sectors can be quite efficient, as opposed to those states, sorry to say lah, negeri-negeri yang kurang maju, negeri-negeri yang kurang dia punya sumber kewangannya, yang mana dapat dilihat bahawa the public sector's services, the quality is not really satisfying. Jadi itu maksudnya. Maksudnya di sini, when we talk about the economy, so mean to say, taking into examples Malaysia, apabila negara kita doing well, we doing well in our economics, especially back in year 2016 or 2016, 14, 15, 16, 17, kita punya GDP is increasing and so on. How basically we look on how our government has deliver the services, has deliver the welfare, even the welfare to the people. Banyaklah contoh, bagi duit, bagi skim ini, skim itu, bantuan ini, bantuan itu dan sebagainya. Nak sambung belajar, buat master, buat PhD, ada assistance, FOC semuanya, bagi grant. So those are the things that when the economic prospers, government will give back to the people in terms of a lot of things, assistance, grants, and so on. And this also will look into how the government become more efficient. The moment the economics down, the government doesn't have a lot of money, so a lot of assistance has been slashed and so on. So the people will look into the government is not effective enough. So the core themes and assumptions that underpin approach to the public sector. So the objective of the flourishing flourishing public sector and the need to reduce the size of public sector borrowing requirement. So meaning to say, when we talk about the public sector, when the economics better, so we will increase the size of the public sector, where we thought that during the economic good times, we require a lot of people to provide the services and so on. But the moment economic become down and so on, okay, so the budget increase, so we have to reduce the budget and so on, okay. So the size of the public sector requirement, even the staffing as well. Bukan sahaja borrowing requirement, pinjam duit dan sebagainya, but also in terms of the cost, overhead and so on, need to be reduced as well. Jadi terus terang cakap lah, jadi kalau nak cakap ada intake kerajaan, nak minta kerja kerajaan masa ekonomi sekarang ni, mungkin susah, mungkin tak banyak kekosongan akan di-offer sebabkan oleh keadaan ekonomi menyukarkan kerajaan untuk meningkatkan perbelanjaan, belanjawan, to give the services. Mean to say, bila kata-kata bila services dikurangkan, maka keperluan untuk ambil staf baru terpaksa dibekukan. That's the things lah sebenarnya. So therefore, there are the needs to reduce the overall size of the public sector. Jadi setengah sektor terpaksa, setengah jabatan terpaksa dijumutkan, terpaksa ditutup and so on. Bilangan staf dikurangkan dan sebagainya. Tiada pengambilan staf baru. And this will affect the service that public sector rendered to the people. Bayangkan, apabila ekonomi tak bagus, kita tak boleh nak ambil doktor-doktor baru bekerja di hospital. Kita tak dapat nak tukar mesin baru di hospital. So what do you expect the quality of service that hospital can give to us? Ada idea tak? Ada idea tak?
Ulang sir, macam ni ada?
Sekiranya kita terpaksa reduce size of the public sector. Maksudnya di sini, contoh saya ambil contoh doktor. Ekonomi tak bagus, kita terpaksa stop pengambilan doktor baru. Bayangkan, doktor baru, hospital tak boleh buat baru. Peralatan dalam hospital tak boleh tukar, semua pakai barang lama. Apa our expect dengan quality service mereka nanti, hospital? Okey ke tak okey?
Tak okey.
Tak okey.
Tak okey kan? Kenapa tak okey awak rasa?
Sebab perubahan teknologi kan macam dia tak ikut. Lepas tu ubat-ubatan pun kena beli yang baru.
So, adakah kita akan dapat kualiti kesihatan yang baik sebagai rakyat?
Tidak.
Tidak kan? So actually it really affects. It really affects. So awak bayangkan masa COVID ni. Kita tak dapat nak upah doktor lagi. Doktor yang ada sekarang overburden. Kita tak boleh nak beli mesin. Kita tak boleh nak beli vaksin. Sebab kan tak cukup duit. Ekonomi jatuh dan sebagainya. Adakah kita akan selamat? So these are the of course lah tidak lah kan. So these are the things lah. These are the things that the government have to think. The moment the economic downturn happens, these are the things that we really need to take care of, how we want to make sure certain services, certain services need to maintain, but there are certain services that we eventually have to reduce. Jadi selalunya mana-mana contoh macam kita kata masa COVID ni, jadi sesetengah jabatan kerajaan yang dilihat bukannya penting pada ketika ini, terpaksa dikurangkan bajet, tiada pengambilan baru, pengurangan staf dan sebagainya. Macam itulah lebih kurang. Okey? Sebabkan oleh setengah perkara yang lebih utama lagi. Okay. So the assumption that monopolistic public services are inherently inefficient. This is the assumption that people said, that due to the monopolistic nature of the public sector. So because dia monopoli, macam contoh Kementerian Kesihatan, mereka monopoli. Semua hospital kerajaan mereka monopoli. So how good the services being rendered also, people perception, public perception will always have this kind of mindset that dah lah, tak efficient. ini kerja apa tu GH apa semua ni slow apa semua. Even though when we try to look into the report, the ranking dunia, kita antara yang bagus, negara yang bagus, top 10 in terms of the apa tu public health yang bagus provided by the government. Okay. So the idea is to create a mixed economy of the welfare. Okay, where the providers of the service can come from both public and private sector. So meaning to say, the idea is, what if there are certain services that public sector provide before can be corporatized, boleh di privatize, boleh diswastakan, boleh diperbadankan. Dah dengar kan? What if ianya diswastakan? Okay. And of course, to create a competition inside the public sector. So it is just like a competition. It's just like a business competition where the idea is, if there's a competition, so of course the public sector will provide their best to win the competition. Nampak? Dia dah ada idea di sini. What if kita boleh buat sesuatu services yang mana boleh diprivatisekan. So the perception will be the public service is a group of people who dominate and control the service provision, serving on interests rather than consumers of services. This is the perception. Okay. Meaning to say here, the public service, what we do is because we provide these certain services, okay, and it is not consumer driven. Bukannya macam swasta, which is consumer driven. Whatever consumer needs, we provide. But in the public sector, bukan. So this is the perception. So how we want to get through all of this in order for us to really implement the NPM? Itu cabaran dia sebenarnya. So these are things that happen in late 1980s until now, actually. Okay. And of course, initial attention has been given to the trade union and later to the monopolies of professional groups such as doctors and so on. Okay. So an attempt to reform the supply side of the economy where it helps to ease up factors such as wage rates and restrictive practice that inhibit the supply of the labor. Jadi apabila kita mula untuk melihat how we trying to improve this the public sectors, kita lihat attention, we look into the trade union first, kesatuan kerjaan, okay, negotiate and so on, okay, kemudian we go for the professional groups, doctors, engineers and so on, okay, and after that we look into how to reform the supply side of the economics, okay, such as labor and so on, okay, wages and so on, okay. So these are the things the issues that being looked upon, how we want to implement those NPM. Remember, when we talk about the NPM, the idea is to manage it like a corporation. Meaning to say, we actually corporatize those public services. Jadi kalau dah corporatize, takkan gaji sama dengan kerajaan. Kan? Takkan gaji sama. Takkanlah dia punya in terms of the authority dan sebagainya, decision making dia masih lagi restricted, birokrasi. So these are the things that we look into. So it's not easy, even though we think that NPM is just like an utopia for the public sector. Semua boleh. Tapi sebenarnya not necessary, because a lot of restrictions need to be catered off. And these are the issues actually in the public sector. In order for public sector to be able to do a reform, So these are the factors that we have to look into. Okay. And of course, the last aspect will be the technology. It refers to the potential of technology and techniques used to make efficiency savings as well to improve the performance. Okay. So new technology will offer both threats and also opportunities. Example here, new system of data storage, transfer and retrieval offer possibility of developing and changing the organization structure. Okay. Alright. So apabila kita lihat, when we look into the potential of technology, as I said before, even in the previous lectures, I always mention about these examples where when the government started to implement e-government, ataupun kalau bahasa lama kami dulu, e-kerajaan lah, e-kerajaan, meaning to say electronic government. So all the transactions, everything on your fingertip. Go to the website, you can just simply apply any assistance or do some submission and so on without having for you to go to the counter. So these are the new technology. And what happened, okay, they are threats as well, where as we know the technology is really fast moving. So the needs to keep updated with those technology is very important. Okay, but the government, the problem will be the government are not able to do that because a lot of things have to be catered on. Knowledge, in terms of training, human resource, and then some more maintenance, knowledge, this technology know-how and so on. These are the things that membelenggu lah kita kata, restrain the government to be more technological. Okay. So the organizations that fail to utilize this may be at a disadvantage. Taking into example, contoh, apabila anda hendak renew road tax, anda boleh gunakan online. Okay, insurans pun sama dan sebagainya. Tetapi apabila anda hendak membayar you punya house assessment, cukai pintu rumah. Okay, katakanlah rumah anda berada di Majlis Daerah Bau sana. Okay. JPJ okay lah, senang because it's a central government, it's a federal government. They are quite advanced in the way that you can just do it online. Tapi nak bayar assessment rumah, tak boleh. Sebab apa? Tak boleh bayar guna online. Sebab apa? Oh, Majlis Daerah Bau, we are not ready yet. We are not implementing those technology stuff. We don't yet to have this e-payment or e-counter and so on. Kena pergi beratur dekat Majlis Daerah, beratur kat kaunter nak bayar. Pula sampai sana, oh sorry kami tak dapat terima bayaran guna kad apa semua. Kena pakai cash. Awak pula tak bawa cash tak cukup. Nak ingat tak boleh pakai debit card, tak boleh rupanya. Okay, so meaning to say, even though there are certain government services that offer this kind of technology things, awak pergi BKS, awak boleh bayar guna kad, awak boleh bayar guna Sarawak Pay, awak boleh bayar online lagi tu. Tapi apabila pergi ke Majlis Daerah Bau, tak boleh, because the government, the public department there is small. They don't have this the capability to adapt this technology, and what we have is they are in disadvantage. So meaning to say, you will perceive that this Majlis Daerah Bau as inefficient berbanding dengan MBKS, TBKU dan sebagainya yang ada those kind of technology. So this is the perception of the people, expectation as well. Okay, so people will perceive that, oh, this majlis daerah bawah ni tak bagus lah, slow apa semua. Padahal kerana mereka they fail to adapt those technology due to back to the economic factor tadi. Okay. Right. So, any questions about those 4 aspects? Any questions about those 4 aspects? Bagaimana kita lihat those 4 aspects in the changing of environment will eventually affect on how the public services deliverance and so on.
Hello sir.
Ya, ya.
Apa tu meaning to say environment ni semua boleh dikatakan external factor lah untuk sebuah organisation. Bila benda tu berlaku kita kena adapt. Nak macam mana nak tak nak sekali pun kita kena adapt benda tu supaya dapat maintain kita punya penyampaian tu.
Yes. Those 4 aspects actually is the environment aspect. Meaning to say it is mostly external lah. Memang luaran lah, faktor luaran. And somehow could be internal as well. Okay. Dan this environment changes tadi will be dia punya coefficient dia will be greater and greater along the time. Contoh sekarang ni masa COVID. Awak tak boleh nak expect people come to the government office to get the services kan, which is very risky. Betul? Very risky. Awak nak benarkan orang luar masuk ke pejabat for getting services is very risky. So what happened? Certain departments have to adapt those things, have to adapt those changes. Kerana whether they like it or not, okay, remember that there are some targets for the public services to render the services. Okay, there are target there. But the thing is, because of our environment now, let's say this currently in COVID-19, you cannot deliver your service. You cannot deliver your service. Okay, sebabkan orang tak boleh datang. So what happens? Of course, your department will be perceived as incompetence, inefficient, ineffective. Okay, jadi those perkara-perkara tadi, okay, especially yang teknologi, saya bagi contoh teknologi kan, okay, whether you like or not, you have to consider, you have to adapt with those requirement environment in order for you to be seen competitive enough with other public sectors. Itu baru kita cerita pasal teknologi, belum kita cerita pasal politik lagi, ekonomi lagi dan sebagainya. Alright? Boleh faham? So kenapa perlu kita ubah? Kenapa kita perlu adapt those new public management, and what are the change agent, why we need this change agent and so on, why we need to have a strategic change in terms of reforming the public services. Okay, so now we look into the second subtopic will be the 3 E's. Okay, so the 3 E's will be the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. Okay, and these 3 E's must present in the context, content, and process that we will look into in the Pettigrew's model in the last subtopic. Tapi important thing will be, what is the 3E? 3E. Okay. So 3Es is important in the government policy, and public sector service managers cannot escape from its influence. It's very important. Okay. So those officers in the public service, whether you like or not, you have to, whatever decisions, whatever planning, whatever policies that you decide, it must be accordance to these 3 E's. Okay, why? Because efficiency and effectiveness is very important for improving the organization's performance. Meaning to say, if public sector services is not efficient and effective, therefore you are not performing. As easy as that. Okay, you are not performing. Okay, so we look into this figure based on Lawton and Ross. So the input will be the resources. Resources could be financial, could be from the human capital and other things. Okay, so from the resources that we have, okay, the input that we have, we look into the output, which is the service or the products that being rendered to the target group. Okay, when we talk about input and output, how you utilize the resources. Okay, jadi bila kita kata pasal input and output, okay, the utilization, okay, here, okay, the utilization of the resources, it must be par with the output. Meaning to say, we try to avoid any wastage. Okay, so we don't want to have any wastage of the resources. So meaning to say, okay, meaning to say, whatever input that you have, it must be reflected on how good your services is. How good your services is. In terms of number, in terms of how many items of the services, frequencies, and so on. So itu adalah efficiency. Okay. And from the outputs, it could be services that you provide. What will be the impact? You do have a lot of programs. You do conduct a lot of sessions, programs, engagement, but the impact is so small, meaning to say you don't have the effectiveness. Something wrong with your policy maker. Something wrong with your decision making process. Something wrong with your strategic planning. Something wrong with your managers. Itu maksud dia. Okay. Even though awak kata, our department, we have a lot of budget this year. We have about 100 million ringgit. We have enough numbers of the officers to be on the ground, blah blah blah. Oh, memang bagus. Kita tiap-tiap minggu kita buat engagement, tiap-tiap minggu kita buat program. Ni kita punya penerima bantuan dan sebagainya. Nampak beberapa ribu orang dapat apa semua. Yes, you are good. The output is very good. Meaning to say, you are very efficient. Tetapi, apabila report audit keluar, ya, bila report audit keluar, okay, apabila buat feedback, daripada reflection daripada those programs yang dibuat apa semua, tidak menampakkan impak yang positif, kurang impact positif kepada penerima services tadi. So not effective. Faham? Boleh faham ini? Biasa nampak benda ni?
Ya.
Boleh biasa nampak benda ni tak?
Nampak.
Pernah nampak benda ni kan? Penerima banyak, tapi tak juga ramai yang tak miskin, yang tak juga bilangan miskin kurang, betul?
Betul.
Biasa nampak kan? Okay, good. So you understand basically. These are the things that really handling these are the issues, main issues that really circulates around the public sector. How to make an impactful services. Policy maker. Sebab tu tadi kita ada chapter 9, you belajar pasal strategic planning. How to have an impactful services. So those are the things lah yang kita perlu lihat. So in 3 is we look into how basically we can achieve those two, which is it must be efficient plus effective. Must be both. Then you can say that the services rendered by this particular public sector's department is best. Macam tu. Okay? So the figure 1 just now explains an organization as having inputs, products and output. Okay. So example, ini dalam corporate, in the car manufacturing, input will be the raw materials, the labor, energy, design, blah, blah, blah. Inputs are put into the production process to produce the car, which is the output. So reduce wastage, meaning to say you have more efficiency in terms of handling your resources and so on. Okay, now we look into the definition of the terms of the 3E, of the 3 E's. So there are 3: economy, efficiency and effectiveness. Now we look into the economy first. So what is economy in terms of the 3 E's? So in this 3E, the economy refers to an economic measure where it describes the extent to which the cost of input can be minimized. Meaning to say, how to efficiently minimize the cost. The cost could be the labor. The cost could be the money itself. The cost could be the equipment and also time. So these are considered as a cost. Okay. So usually measured in money saved by switching to cheaper inputs or cheaper options. Could be cheaper options, could be something else. So the concept relates to the input. Example kita kata tadi, motor car manufacturers. This means minimizing the cost of the physical input. Okay, contoh, kurangkan guna labor, more mechanization, automation dan sebagainya. But for public services, where purchasing goods and services at the lowest price or using competitive tendering to lower the labor costs. So when we talk about how to economize the expenditure, kita buat tender. Nak beli barang, tender. 3 tender, mana harga yang bagus, spek yang okey, ambil. Services, which companies offer services as par as other company, but lower cost, ambil. Jadi, ini we'll discuss more further in topic 11, which is contracting out services. And then the efficiency. Okay, so efficiency will be to achieve by minimizing of inputs to the program in relation to the output from it, or by maximizing outputs in relations to input. Apa maksud dia? Meaning to say, the inputs just now, we try to economize it and we minimize Okay. Minimize inputs with the output or maximizing outputs with the input. Meaning to say, we try to avoid any wastage. Jangan membazir. So it concerns with the relationship between the inputs and outputs. So an efficiency program is when the target is achieved with the least possible use of resources, or the actual target is secured with the least use of the resources. Ataupun inilah yang kita cakap dalam zero defect in TQM, yang mana we talk about the QA QC. Okay. So how can you deliver this? Monitoring, quality control, auditing, itu semua dalam chapter 12 nanti. Okay. And about getting more for less. And the determinant of the relationship between the input and output is the process of the product. So example here in the car company about making the best use of manufacturing processes, technology and stuff to add value to the raw material when making a car. But for the public services, it's about the managerial reform and introduction of a new working practice. Competitive tendering system also encourage in-house organizations to ask questions about what needs to be doing and how it could be done, should be done. So meaning to say here, in public services, is about how the decision-making processes, the managers, the officers, as we know that in the conventional public services, the conservative way, there's a lot of bureaucracy, red tapes, restrictions, authority dan sebagainya. And by reforming the management of the public sectors, devolution of power, decentralizations, authority, giving the authority to certain aspect and so on, decision making and so on, will help to improve the public services. And introduction of the new working practice, meaning to say, based on the KPI, we have those KPI, Blue Ocean, we have this BSC, business scorecard, and so on, auditing practices, 5S, Kaizen, and so on. These are the things that help to reform the working practice. Okay, and of course, the approach of the privatizations, contracting out, and so on, by reducing the resources, okay, where outsourcing will be the best solution, to give better services, okay, and so on, where this will also improve the public service. And the last one will be the effectiveness, where an effectiveness measure indicates the extent to which objectives have been met. So meaning to say, on the services or the products that being produced, how effective it will be. Okay, and there's no cost involved, because in order for us to measure the effectiveness, there's no cost can be reflected. Jadi about achieving what we want to achieve, itu yang tadi ada auditing dan sebagainya. About relationship between intended outputs and actual outputs. Okay. Example, a target to achieve 10% share of the market for a particular car company. Tapi in the business, yes, it can be translated. It can be shown. It can be displayed. The effectiveness by statistics and so on. Tapi untuk public sector, it is more problematic. Taking into example, apabila kita bercakap berkenaan dengan effectiveness, okay, di Unimas, can we say that the lecturer is not effective in teaching because ramai orang tak dapat A? Soalan saya, bolehkah anda mengatakan bahawa seseorang pensyarah di Unimas tidak efektif dalam pengajaran mereka kerana tak ramai orang dapat A?
Semestinya sir.
Oh, semestinya. Bagus dah tu, Elazar tu. Jadi saya mau tanya lah. Dengan okay. Ini. Oh, ini. Ni ini tu.
Ya, sir.
What is your opinion? Adakah pensyarah itu tidak efektif? Efektif okay, dalam pengajaran kerana ramai pelajar tak dapat A? Ya, ya. Tapi adakah pensyarah tu dapat mengawal faktor penerimaan kepada student tadi? Awak sebagai student, you as a student, can you think that, can you assume that the lecturer is not effective when only a few of students getting A in the subject? Boleh ke macam tu? Okay. Okay, Fatin cakap effectiveness is assessed by setting specific targets before work begin and then determining whether or not the goal have been reached. But the question will be, Fatin, the question will be, can you control, especially in the public service? Contohlah macam saya mengajar. Bolehkah saya mengawal kadar penerimaan awak faham tak faham? Tak boleh kan? So, itulah yang berlaku dalam public service. You cannot control. Even though you have those QA, QC apa semua, still you can control how effective the service that being provided to you, by you to the people. So, when we talk about the effectiveness, kita biasa dengar bantuan kerajaan tidak efektif lah, apa dan sebagainya. Because somehow, okay, there are no clear indication how to control or how to manage the receptions of the services. Tak ada. Tak ada satu mekanisme pun yang boleh control. Tapi kalau dalam corporate, is different because you can control them. You can furnish it and so on. But in the public service, it's very difficult. Okay, it's very difficult. Because our target is the people. Ramai. Susah. Kalau corporate is consumer driven, is targeted. Is targeted. You can assess. You can get their feedback. Tapi kalau untuk public sector, public service, susah. But of course, there are some mechanism to be used for the public service to assess the effectiveness. Iaitu cara dia, biasa tak kalau awak pergi ke kaunter kerajaan, dia ada tulis sana, sila nilai perkhidmatan kami. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Muka muram, muka kurang muram, muka tak ada perasaan, senyum sikit, senyum banyak. Ada tak benda tu? Ada kan? itulah one of the way how the government is trying to measure the effectiveness. Kemudian, biasa tak kalau awak pergi kepada bangunan kerajaan, dia ada tulis sana, carta kerja, carta aliran proses kerja. Kalau you pergi sini, berapa minit, target dia. Untuk settle ni, berapa hari dan sebagainya. Contoh dia kata awak pergi ke hospital, awak pergi ke emergency room. Okey cik, kata dia, awak demam. So, awak dikonsider sebagai kes hijau. So, waiting time dia ditulis sana. Cik, kalau time ini, cik kena tunggu dalam 3 hingga 4 jam untuk doktor boleh cek cik. Ada kan? Kemudian, pada masa sama juga, awak tengok orang datang lepas awak. Accident. Kaki hilang sebelah. Kaki hilang sebelah. Dianggap sebagai red case. Zon merah. Terus masuk bilik bedah dan sebagainya. Terus operate on the spot. So these are how the government trying to assess or trying to deliver to have an impact. Okay, to have an impact on how basically they measure the effectiveness of the services. Perkara inilah yang kita boleh lihat bagaimana corporate and also public service is totally different. Okay, boleh faham tak masalah 3E ni tak ada masalah. Boleh
Faham, sir.
Okay, good. So, 3Es in the public sector is easier to apply those 3E concept in a car company as it needs to improve performance. Where the customer can go for the other brands if the price is too high or the quality is too low. Okay, macam awak lah. Oh sir, saya tak nak lah beli kereta Proton sir. Kereta Proton kualiti rendah rasa saya beli Pro 2 bagus kualiti. You have choice to go to another brand and so on. Okay. However, it's difficult to apply in the public sector. You know why? Oh sir, tak bagus lah GH sir. Saya pergi hospital lain lah sir. Sini hospital kamu pergi. Soalan sama. Oh nak pergi hospital mana? Kat Kuching ni. Hospital Petrajaya tak siap-siap. Kan? Okey lah sir, tak apa, saya pergi hospital Serian lah sir. Pergilah Serian sana. Sejam driving. Just to get your healthcare services. Because they are monopoly. There's only one GH in Kuching. There's no other GH in Kuching. Okay? Sebab tu susah. Susah nak apply dalam public sector. Okay? So example here is only one Department of Social Security. Claimant cannot go elsewhere if not satisfied. In competitive environment, incentive to be efficient. Okay? Such as increased profits, increased dividend for shareholders. Inefficiency could lead to a disclosure, and where monopolies does not have this incentive because being a monopoly, you can just don't care about the competition. Macam itulah. Pergi hospital, GH, wah susahlah GH, ramai orang apa semua, servis lama lah apa semua. Do you have any choice? Do you have any choice for you to go to other hospital? Kalau awak cakap, oh saya pergi swasta, that will be different case. Awak tak puas hati dengan KPJ, boleh pergi BMC. Tak suka BMC, pergi Timberland. You see? Tak suka Timberland, pergi Normah. They are for private hospitals. This is a corporate world. It's different. And those four are competing each other. Mereka bersaing to give better prices, better services. But not for government. You have no choice. Sir, tak baguslah hospital GH, saya pergi Serian. Serian pun tak bagus, pergi Bauk. Bauk tak bagus, pergi Lunduk. Lunduk pun tak bagus, pergilah Sibu. So, it's quite difficult actually to apply those 3Es in the public sector. Okay. A car company has a clearly identified product, which is the car. Not so in the public service. Example, what does a university produce? So this will be question. Okay, and a car company has a clearly identified customer that enters financial exchange with the company, but not so for the public service. The customer could be the member of public, ministers, parliament, taxpayers, and many more. Right? So there's no differentiations between the customers of the public sector. Okay. A car company has clearly explicit stated objectives such as maximizing profits, efficient create savings, more profits, but not for the public service where the values underpinned in the civil service is the demand for equity. Example, it is correct for the police to focus only on the areas where the rich live and ignore the area where the poor live. Adakah adil bagi polis untuk jaga kawasan orang kaya tapi tak kisah kawasan orang miskin? Biarlah lantak pi lah diorang. Is it adil? So demand is of equity applied in the public service. Awak pergi ke hospital kerajaan, tak kira bapa awak CEO ke menteri ke, the moment you step into the hospital, you are a normal citizen, you must be treated equally. And therefore, all of these problems make it difficult for the 3Es to be pursued in the public services. That's the main issues in the corporate, in the public sector. Right? Issue dia. Susah nak buat macam corporate. So in Britain, various initiatives being undertaken to improve public service performance, where in 80s followed the efficiency strategy. So efficiency strategy achieved through the cultural change, where the critics of the strategy argue that it was more about the economy than about the efficiency. We argued that strategy aimed to reduce inputs to the process instead of improving the ratio between inputs and output as reflected in the policy of reducing the level of public spending. Pada 80-an dulu, Britain, example dia dah buat penjimatan. Yang mana dikritik, it aims to reduce inputs, privatization and so on. And strategy could not be neutral as political decisions have to be made where it reflects the values of the decision makers. Okay. Kerana those policies, those strategies is more to the political decisions. And during this time in the 1980s, this is during the time when the Prime Minister of the Britain during that time, the Margaret Thatcher, okay, she's the one who giving the idea of the savings to save the public spending and so on. Jadi pada masa itu sekolah-sekolah, tak silap saya pada masa itu sekolah-sekolah dikenakan bayaran dan sebagainya, and this creates a lot of a hit in terms of the either the government should profiting from the people or not. These are the idea. Is the government should profiting from the people or not? Itu soalan dia. And audit commission promote 3Es in the local authorities and the national health services through the encouraging improvement in the management practice, and focus is on improving process that changes inputs into outputs. So audit ada. So dalam kerajaan pun ada audit, bahagian audit dan sebagainya. To auditing, either from the inputs become output, we look into how it has been used efficiently or not. And primary level in the strategy is to improve the management in the British public services, where the quality targets is about 85% of the customer to regard the service they receive from the agency as satisfactory or better. This is how the improvement of the public services, where after that consumers, the customers or the people who get the services perceive that the service become much better and better. Okay, of course the financial targets, savings about £57.3 million during that time, and throughput targets. Okay. Social fund crisis applications clear on the day the needs arises. Targets and so on. Let's say yang minta bantuan dapat bantuan terus on the spot dan sebagainya. To show the efficiency of the services. Okay. And of course, okay, there's a one model to look into the classes of variable for the strategic change, which is the Pettigrew model. So in Pettigrew model, okay, they uses this 3 E's as well, whereas the Pettigrew identifies 3 classes of variables for the strategic change, which is the context of the changes, the content of the changes, and the process of the changes. In the outer context, okay, refers to the broad environment, meaning to say, in the context, they are outer context, which is a broad environment containing the factors which the organization operates, which will be the social, economic, and politic. Okay. While for the inner environment, they refer to the organization structures, the organization itself. Okay. Where, okay, the content will refer of what the changes will occur. So for the 3 E's, we are looking into how we implementing the 3 E's using the Pettigrew model. Okay, using the Pettigrew model. So Pettigrew are the context. Context will be what will be the outside environment and what will be the inside environment. Okay. So with that, and then there are some changes that we want to create. So the content will refer to the changes. Okay. And from that content, we will line out how the process will happen. Okay. And from that, you can assess the efficiency and the effectiveness of the changes. And this will be the strategic change for the any organizations to do a reform, to reform their managerial, their services, their spending, expenditure, and so on. Okay, this will be the model. Okay. All right. So basically, that's all. All right. So I believe that for Pettigrew model, okay, it's all about the process. It's all about the model. Okay. So see here, they have outside and inside for the organization. The content will be the changes. The process will be the way. The way to change. Okay. So Pettigrew model will be the model of how we look into basically how to have a strategic change over the public sector. That's the idea lah. Okay, that's the idea. Okay, how will be implemented? Okay, is on how this is what we call as a Pettigrew model. We need to say this model explains these 3 contexts in using the 3E, and in order for us to achieve the 3 E's. Okay, okay. So they will be the way of achieving how you want in order to have this 3 E's. Okay? Clear with that? Are you clear with that?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Clear betul?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ada soalan apa-apa tak nak tanya? Anything? Dulu cakap Pettigrew model ni bukan model algorithm ke, bukan modeling apa semua, bukan model pakaian. It's about how these three context in order for you to achieve the 3 E's. Itu maksud dia. Okay. So do you ada apa-apa soalan macam mana nak buat Pettigrew model ke, how the process happen and so on. Okay. So basically when we talk about the process happens, it's all coming through from the strategic planning. Okay, it's all coming through from the strategic planning. Then, in terms of implementing it, this is where you look into all of this. And after that, you know these are the changes. Then you want to implement it. Either you want to do the privatization ke, you nak buat contracting out, you nak buat competitive tendering ke, you nak gunakan, you nak buat auditing ke apa semua, is all about implementation. So chapter 11 until chapter 14 will be the implementation. Right? So basically, when we talk about the process, the whole thing in the public sector, you ever heard that we talk about the auditing? Kadang-kadang dalam berita you dengar pasal audit negara. Jabatan audit negara saying that, okay, pembelanjaan sekian-sekian, jabatan sekian, okay, mana dikatakan jabatan-jabatan yang dalam dikategorikan sebagai baik, sederhana, bermasalah. So actually, those audits are looking into the process of how the deliverance from input to output. Okay. Mereka melihat perkara tersebut, mereka melihat dokumentasi, mereka melihat pelaksanaan, mereka melihat bagaimana duit tadi direflect kepada pelaksanaan program dan juga bantuan yang diadakan dan apa tu, whatever things yang those related departments doing, and then mereka melihat adakah ianya berkesan. So by having this by revisiting all those penerima bantuan dan sebagainya, they look into adakah penerima tadi tahun ni ambil terima bantuan, tahun depan terima bantuan, tahun satu lagi terima bantuan, sampai 20 tahun masih terima bantuan. Adakah tidak ada sebarang perubahan? Selepas terima bantuan, adakah tidak ada sebarang perubahan yang berlaku dalam hidup mereka? So all of this will be audited, will be looked into. Okay, and what happened after that? There will be measure, and they will see that either those programs that being conducted by certain departments is effective or not. Biasa dengar kan, audit jabatan cakap ini, audit jabatan cakap ada penyalahguna kuasa, audit cakap ada kewangan perbelanjaan yang meragukan. Those are the things actually. Okay, yang audit cakap ada kontrak, buat kontrak tapi dia punya services tak seperti yang dalam kontrak. Ini adalah perkara-perkara berkaitan dengan yang anda akan lihat dalam chapter 13, iaitu accountability dan juga values, ethics and so on, professionalism dan sebagainya. Okay. Okay. Ada soalan tak? Apa nak soalan nak tanya? Sebelum saya bagi tahu awak apakah yang perlu anda buat untuk minggu depan dan seterusnya. Hello? Ada orang? Oh, ada chatting ada dalam chat Okay. Kankyo Kaizen ini is more to the process of the TQM dan sebagainya lah. Okay. Boleh, tapi saya akan for that one explanation, saya akan explain dalam WhatsApp group. I will give you about this Kankyo Kaizen because it's within the TQM process and so on. Okay. It's a process manufacturing apa semua yang diadaptasi oleh Jepun dan sebagainya, pengurusan Jepun. Okay, but I will do a spread session inside the WhatsApp group for that particular Kankyo Kaizen. Alright. Okay. Ada soalan lagi? Tak ada soalan? So let's say kau tak ada soalan. Alright. So for this one, I will say that this will be the last lecture for you guys, because after this, for chapter 11 until chapter 14, this will be